in fact, you're going to talk about Canada, right? So you've
Yeah.
got some stuff. Talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, so here's another one now. This was September 23rd, 4 a.m. And I had a really unsettled night, Steve. I'm not gonna tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
But it was, just this wrestling and wrestling in the spirit. And at one point, the Father took me over Canada, and I found myself over Ottawa, which is the capital city of Canada. And I was high over the Parliament buildings, there looking down, and I could see literal darkness pulsating out of that legislative, parliament for the nation. Yeah. I mean, it was dark, it was gray, it was overcast. I mean, the demonic atmosphere was so very evident. And so as I'm looking over this, all of a sudden, I'm looking at this building, and it's like the building actually turned into glass, like into a greenhouse. And I could suddenly see through this big, elaborate structure of Parliament. And I could see that underneath it were these concrete type bunkers and tunnels. And I knew that, the nefarious.
Are those literal that you're seeing? What's really underneath there?
I
real
believe so,
tunnel?
Steve. I believe so. I've been told so.
Okay.
So I was taken in, and I was brought into a close proximity of the office of a Canadian leader. His name is Pierre Polivier. And he's the leader of the official opposition here in Canada, the Conservative Party. So he would be like leader of the Republicans, I guess, in Canada, just to put it in kind of an American perspective for you.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at his office, and I'd seen that he had just received a high-level sensitive briefing that had just been handed to him, and it contained information on some very ungodly perversion from his past, that he'd been told that it's okay, we've gotten that buried, you don't have to worry about it, it's not going to cause you problems. But what I saw is he would regret that trip overseas forevermore. And there was no repentance in him for what he had done. The only thing was the grief for getting caught.
Now, are you talking about Pierre or
Pierre?
Okay.
And there was this compromise in his moral character that put him in the most uncomfortable position of being blackmailed and controlled by those who pull the strings and control the political, governance of the nation. And so upon this briefing, he lost control, and, he was in a state of shock and panic and anger and trauma, rushed out of his office, down the elevator, down to kind of face the music and meet the men in black and other party leaders. But they were now compromised beyond repair, and the writing was on the wall. And I was taken up, in that moment into the spirit over the Parliament buildings. And what I saw, Steve, it looked like I saw these missiles coming down, out of the sky, out of the atmosphere. And they had such a pinpoint precision and accuracy. And they actually penetrated the Parliament buildings, and they were taken down. And as I looked, these missiles were not like, with explosives that would make a large blast area, but instead just the weight of their the force and, the inertia, it imploded the structures that they hit. And I realized that what I was looking at, now these things, to me, if you take a city bus and you put a couple of them together, and that, to me, that seemed kind of about the size that these things were. And what I realized is I was looking at the rods of God taking out this evil structure that had been controlling and manipulating Canadians for decades and decades.
Wow.
And like right down to the Masonic roots and foundations.
For anyone that doesn't know, that's a literal weapon, right? It's called the rods of God, dropped from the sky from way the heck up there. And it's I don't even know if it contains explosives or if it's just the sheer speed and weight and strength of that thing.
Yeah.
It penetrates rock. I mean, it just goes.
Now, Steve, I mean, I didn't know that what rods of God were.
You
I mean,
didn't.
I released the word, and I got people sending me stuff on the rods of God and the weaponry that it actually is. I did not know that this is actually an actual weapon that's in the hands of, I believe, the Space Force.
Yeah.
Of our American brothers. And so anyway, that kind of blew me away.
So you got that term before you even...
I did not know that the rods of God were actually an armament, were an official armament.
I've only known it for probably a year and a half or something. I read about it and I thought, what's the rods of God? You can Google it and people can say, well, what's the rods of God? It'll tell you.
Yeah, I did not know. So I'm watching this, and the next thing you know, I'm over the nation of Canada, and I could see that there was a strike. It wasn't just Ottawa that got hit, but there were other government buildings and facilities and targets that were also being taken out from coast to coast. So in what seemed like minutes, the evil infrastructure was wiped out and the enemy was brought to its knees. And there was no longer a structure or anywhere they could hide or function from. This was it. It was over, one and done. The nation kind of went into a state of shock and almost disbelief for what just happened. But the reality was undeniable. And out of the aftermath, there was a new day dawning. And out of the rubble arose a righteous, legitimate government ready to go to rebuild Canada. One nation under God, by the people, for the people. And the Father leveled the old Babylonian system's foundations, and it was time for the nation to behold his kingdom.
So yeah, that's the end of your notes. So it looks like that. So I got to ask the question. So when the rods of God were used, can you? I say in my mind to get clarity, I can see a thing that's a rod penetrating, going clear down into caves and tunnels below. But are you saying it took out all that was the Parliament buildings, or are you saying it took out what actually got destroyed?
What I saw taken out, Steve, was the actual Parliament buildings, the actual structures, buildings, and governmental agencies across the nation that basically functioned in the Freemasonry and in the Babylonian system within the new WEF, the W8, like all of those places were like done.
Wow, that's huge. And I mean, that's you're going to get some knocks on the door and calls. People saying, are you serious? This is but I mean, you're saying this is literal. God showed you the literalness of the rods of God being used to take out evil structures in Canada.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, Steve, what part, when you go in and you start to rebuild a nation, you take down the Asherah poles, you start taking down these
Asherah poles, like in the Bible.
In the Bible. Which one is okay to leave? I mean, none of them are good to leave. And so I believe that as God comes and brings, what he's bringing here, it is going to take out infrastructure that they will not be able to function any longer.